Will's baby birds are for sale, and we take a look at the bullpen. First pitch is next, guys. What's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 67 of Bringing the Heat. My name's Cody Pyatt. With me, as always, the four-seam fastball co-host, Will Sism. Brother, what a day. Couple of days on the baseball front, man. The Orioles are for sale. This means big things. But before we get into that, how in the world are you doing?
Yeah, a lot of good stuff to talk about, but doing well. Time is flying by. We're basically through the month of January, and hey, this is the last month, February, that we've got without baseball for a while. So how about that?
I love it so much. Hey, before we dive into baseball, about this Super Bowl, man, you got to lean. I think 98% of America is rooting for one team, but who are you going for?
Well, I will definitely be rooting for the 49ers. I've got some Chiefs fatigue, not going to lie.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's going to be a really good game. Two really good teams that are playing well at the right time. But I'm going to go 49ers. I think that, I don't know. I think that defensive line will put some pressure on Mahomes and hold on in a close game for the win. So that's kind of my thoughts on it, at least.
Hey, man, I hope it's a close game. That's my thoughts. And Usher's going to crush the halftime show.
I agree.
Last football thing, did you see? You might not have the Ravens game, Chiefs-Ravens AFC Championship game. There was a lone Titans fan in the stands, dude. It was hilarious. I don't know what he was doing there. I wonder if he bought the tickets at the beginning of the year. Dude, this is our year. We're going to be in Baltimore.
He's very optimistic, and I applaud that if that's the case.
I mean, tell you, it might have been Vrabel. I don't know. Hey, speaking of a Baltimore sports franchise, man, we had big news the other day. It's been a busy week. The Angelos family sold the majority stake of the Orioles to another billionaire. They sold it for $1.725 billion. We really don't know a ton about this ownership group. I did read that Cal Ripken is going to be a part of it, which I think is beyond cool. But as far as how they're going to run things, this is all super fresh. They haven't come out and said anything, so we don't have a ton to report. But the guy who's walking out the door, just as recent as last offseason, said, if we're going to keep this core around, we're going to have to really raise prices. And he was talking about how it's just, it's not going to happen. We had this little window. So I have to imagine they're going to do better than that. We were talking about it before the show started. Steve Cohen came and bought the Mets and kind of made it look cool to go out and spend money on baseball teams. And I think that's pretty neat. But hey, what do you got, man? This is pretty cool for Baltimore, huh?
Yeah, I think this has to be super exciting for anybody that pulls for Baltimore. I think that, the new ownership group, I have to believe that they're going to, surely they wouldn't have bought the team if they didn't kind of have a fresh direction to go and kind of knowing that they've got all this young superstar core all coming up at the same time. Seemed like a prime opportunity to hopefully come in, make a difference, put a huge emphasis on locking up those superstars, Adley, Gunnar, Jackson Holiday, even some of the guys that are still in the minors right now. But man, this is exciting. I'm excited. I still have my Tampa Bay allegiance, but man, Baltimore is absolutely my next favorite team. And I love this young core that they've got. So I'm excited about it. I know a Baltimore fan has to be excited about it. And man, I feel like Camden Yards is going to be absolutely rocking for the foreseeable future. I'm excited for that team, man. I think this is nothing but good news.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome. I mean, now fan fiction, you should go out tomorrow. They trade for Dylan Cease. Bada bing, bada boom. This team won 101 games last year, took home the crown in the AL East, and now they might have a guy in the ownership role who wants to open the checkbook a little bit, which is always exciting. So yeah, man, it's going to be pretty cool. Unless you're Red Sox and Rays fans, then it can be pretty tough for the division. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes,
True.
buddy. We're gonna get through it together. I think that's important.
Yeah.
Moving on, Jock Peterson, gun for hire, man. He is to the NL champs. The D-backs added Peterson on a 1-year, $9.5 million deal. The new D-backs slugger will likely be on the strong side of a platoon, facing very few lefties. He had kind of a down year, 235 average with 15 bombs in 2023, but he's going to come to a lineup where he's not expected to be the number one guy. He'll be behind, obviously, big names like Walker. You got your main man, Corbin Carroll, and Marte. Dude, it's a pretty deep lineup when you get to looking at it. Obviously, they did well enough to make it to the World Series last year. What do you like about this?
Yeah, I think it's just always good and let's keep in mind how young the Diamondbacks still are. That young core of Moreno, Corbin Carroll, Marte is still pretty young. I mean, I think it's always good whenever you've got a team that now expects to contend to add those veteran key pieces that aren't necessarily the superstars of your team, but they're kind of glue guys. We'll probably talk about Justin Turner here in just a little bit with the Blue Jays, but young teams need a couple of those veteran guys sprinkled into that clubhouse. By all accounts that I've ever heard, Jock Peterson seems to be a great clubhouse guy. He's been a part of some really good teams, has all the experience in the world, and he can be an absolute clutch piece when it comes to crunch time and the postseason if they get there again. So it's a very low risk move as well. So even if he has a down year, they don't have, a ton, relatively speaking, invested. So I definitely like the move. I think it seems to be a good fit for all parties involved. And we'll see how it kind of plays out.
Yeah, I like what you said about October because we are a few years removed from everybody in Atlanta wearing pearls on behalf of this guy. So, yeah, dude can get hot and do the dang thing. A couple relievers signed, and I want to know which one you like better. Hector Neris to the Cubbies. They agreed on a 1-year, $9 million deal. He's 34 years old. Didn't have that on my bingo card. But he was third among all pitchers in baseball in ERA with a 1.71 over 68 and a third innings. He has an option for $9 million in 2025 if he can get 60 appearances. So I gotta imagine he's just gonna be going up to the pitching coach like every day, like, man, I feel the noodle feels good. I'm ready. Put me in there. 1 out. I'll get you 1 out, coach. Whatever you need. Or David Robertson, D-Rod, to the Rangers in a move that seemingly happens every offseason. This guy, 38 now, goes for $11.5 million, and he's going to stabilize that Rangers bullpen. Had a pretty solid year in New York and Miami last year at 3.03 ERA, 1.19 WHIP, and 18 saves. Which one do you like better for these teams?
I tell you what, it's honestly hard to pick one over the other. I really like both moves. I think both guys are great fits for each team. If you pinned me down and had me choose one, I would probably say Robertson slightly, just because I think he's got a better shot of closing.
Yeah.
For the Rangers. Now having said that, Josh Sborz, if we get postseason Josh Sborz, he could very well be the closer.
Be on the blue chip list next year,
right? And Robertson could end up being kind of a setup guy, high leverage guy. But again, I like the move for both teams. I think Robertson's a really, really great fit for Texas. I think I'm not saying he's as good as Josh Hader, but I feel like he's kind of a cheaper, almost as solid kind of option, whereas the Astros went and spent massive big money for a closer. Texas was like, you know what, y'all go ahead and spend. We're going to get a guy who we really like that's not going to cost us near as much money, and we're not going to have to be committed for 5 years. So I like the move. Now with Hector Neris, shifting gears, I don't know of many more just consistent guys year in and year out than a guy like Hector Neris. He's closed before. He's really good as a setup guy, 7th, 8th inning in high leverage moments. Obviously has been through the pressure with the Astros contending these past couple of years. So I love the move for the Cubs because you're getting a guy that if you have to use him in the 9th inning, he can, he's proven that he can do that and be effective. But he's really good as a 7th or 8th inning guy, and a
Yeah.
guy you mentioned this, but like he's a guy that has what we call a rubber arm. Like, I mean, he's been used a lot
Mm-hmm.
over the past few years, and he
Yeah.
just takes the ball every other day, and more often than not is really good when he comes out there. So love
Yeah.
the signings for both of these teams.
Yeah. I was surprised. I guess the age plays a role, but I was surprised the market didn't materialize a little bit more for Neris. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he had an incredible year last year, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's one of those things where I think saves kind of pays a little bit more,
Yep.
obviously. But yeah, I love it, man. More moves that I really liked, and I'm surprised you don't see this more often. The Tigers locked down their number 2 prospect, Colt Keith, just a 10-star, 2 thumbs up. Great name there, Will.
Right.
28.6 mil guaranteed over 6 years, and then he has 3 option years, a 10, 13, and $15 million option. That's where the Tigers are going to save their money. That first 6 years is just getting through arbitration. Because this man is going to start for Detroit, second base on opening day, which I think is pretty cool. His numbers last year, double and triple A, in 126 games were really solid. A 306 average, 27 bombs, and 101 ribbies. Definitely more stick than glove guy, and I've heard or read that they're talking about maybe floating him to third base later in his career. So maybe like a Max Muncy kind of moment. But what do you like about this? This is kind of neat.
Yeah, I mean, this, you kind of have to look at it as hopefully a win-win. I mean, it's life-changing money for the next several years that's kind of essentially guaranteed for the player.
Mm-hmm.
And for the club, if he pans out, which, obviously they are banking on, it's a great deal for the club and the Tigers in this case, because you're basically, as you mentioned, you're getting through the arbitration years.
Yeah.
And, if this guy were to be able to hit the market sooner or go through arbitration sooner, granted, if he does have good years,
Yeah.
then the Tigers are saving a ton of money. So, I love the move for the Tigers. Now, keep in mind, it is a little risky because,
For sure.
I mean, here's the thing. For as many of these high-end prospects that hit, 10 more of them fail. And so, you could be investing a decent amount of money in somebody who really just can't cut it at the major league level.
Yeah.
So time will tell. There is risk involved, but overall, I do like it whenever you see these moves, especially for the franchise.
Yeah. I think it's awesome for like a middle market team.
Yes.
And not getting gun shy. Obviously, you didn't exactly nail the Javi Baez deal. 6 years,
right.
40 in 2021. That is aging like old milk. So,
yeah,
I like it, dude. Dude is. I'm just gonna say it. Dude's a handsome guy. Okay, I just watched the interview. I was like, son of a gun. This guy. Sign me up, man. $28 million, give it to him. I was, dude, it's just cool. It's so cool to see a young person go out and, living the dream. It's pretty awesome.
And you mentioned it. This is how those small to mid-market teams, they have to operate. This is kind of the risks that you see the small to mid-market teams take. They're not going to spend the big money in free agency, but they're going to take a little bit more risk in trying to lock up their homegrown talent, because that's what they have to develop and live by, as you're seeing with, teams like Tampa, teams like Baltimore, Cincinnati. They've invested and developed this top end talent, and that's kind of what you have to really prioritize keeping and signing if you're one of those teams.
Yeah, dude, they're just building a little core in Detroit, man. It's what we need to see Casey do. But you got Torkelson, got Riley Green, and now you got Colt Keith.
I tell you what, man, is Detroit the favorites in the AL Central?
I don't know, man. I don't know. Are Kansas City favored to win 65 games?
I think they can get there.
I think they could. We'll talk about it later. That'd be a good episode. Over under wins, Will. That's what we need to do, brother. Hey, good idea, man. Hey, here's one I kind of liked a couple days ago. Polanco to Seattle on a 5-player deal. Seattle acquire Jorge Polanco in return for Darren Bowen, Gabriel Gonzalez, Justin Tapa, and Anthony DeSclafani. Now, if you remember, DeSclafani, he was just traded from
Robbie Ray deal.
Yeah, that's right. San Francisco to Seattle. Don't unpack, buddy, because you're going to Minnesota. He's probably I don't know. He's probably excited about the move. It's kind of
Yeah.
a lateral move. Two teams on the same level to me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, for Seattle, you get a proven bat. Someone's got a little bit more stick than a Josh Rojas at the second
Right.
base position. And then I think if you're Minnesota, you got back more in, prospects. You got two prospects, two major leaguers who have done it before. That's more than I thought they'd get for Polanco. So a pretty good haul.
Yeah.
Anything stick out to you here?
I'm with you. I think I can see the benefit for both teams, but I think Seattle, I'll just say this. I applaud the Mariners for making a move like this. I hate it when medium to bigger size market teams just like prospect hug their high end prospects. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm of the mindset like I get that it's so important to develop your homegrown talent, and I understand the importance of that. But if you're a medium sized to big market team, especially if you're a contender and your window is open to win now, man,
Uh-huh.
go out and get guys that can help you win.
Yeah.
And so I applaud Seattle for doing that. I know that one of those guys was a top 100 prospect, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that they had high regard for him. But man, Polanco, I'm not saying he's a superstar, but I think the only weakness that Seattle really has is just getting depth throughout that lineup. And I
Yeah.
feel like a guy like Polanco, again, he's not a superstar, but I think he can provide a lot of stability either at the top or in the middle of that lineup somewhere, wherever they slot him. And
Yeah.
so, Seattle is not going to win with Julio just carrying everybody, right?
Yep.
And that
No.
pitching staff is just, you can't rely on pitching and Julio.
Yeah.
So build around Julio with that lineup. It didn't have to be the Dodgers lineup, but give him
Mm-hmm.
some pieces around him.
Mm-hmm.
And then that pitching staff is going to win you a lot of games. So I really like what Seattle's doing here. And,
Yeah.
we'll see how it pans out for Minnesota as well.
Yeah. My two questions are for Seattle. And I guess why it makes a little bit less sense to me is, he's on the final year of his deal. It makes
Yeah.
more sense if you extend him. But he didn't have like he had an okay year, 255 average, 14 home runs, and 48 RBIs in 80 games. So he missed half the season. I like the moves overall they're making. Luke Raley from the Mets, from the Rays.
Yeah.
And then Mitch Garver, they signed as a free agent,
Yeah.
who had a great year last year in Texas. I guess if you're going to do this, I just hate that they moved Robbie Ray. I really liked Robbie
I
Ray
agree.
for Seattle. When they made that signing, it made a lot of sense to me. And I am unsure of the direction they're going, other than I think they just wanted to save money on the Robbie Ray thing. But,
Yeah.
I hope I'm wrong, man, because that division in the West is going to be a lot more fun if you have a 3-team going at it, because I'm sorry to say this, I don't think the Athletics, I don't think the Angels are going to be involved. So is
Nope.
it going to be the battle of Texas all year long? I'd love to see Seattle really get in there and do something. For the Twins, I love it because now it's like Edwin Julian time, okay, and
Yes.
it kind of breaks up the log jam there. They still got, dude. They're moving Buxton back to center field. Twins, man, it's going to be must see TV. How many games Buxton plays over or under, I don't know, 60 in center field. I'd probably take the under, but
Under.
you're like big under 10
Yeah.
games. 10 games
And
under.
yeah, and Royce Lewis, as much as I hate to say it, man, Minnesota has got to have those guys in the lineup. Like, got to. That lineup is already weak.
Yeah.
And if you take one of those guys out of that lineup, it is just putrid.
Yep. Dude, I'm with you. Hey, real quick, biggest guy coming over is that Gabriel Gonzalez. I think you kind of
Yes.
mentioned him. He is a top 100 prospect on some lists. On most of them, he is. On some, he is not. But he had a pretty solid. Okay, single A. I just want to throw these numbers out here because they're so
Mhm.
good. 348, 403, 530 slash line in single A. He went to high A and got roughed up a little bit, but he is only 20. And the hit tool seems to be there. Everything that I saw online, it's very exciting stuff for them. So, hey, give it a couple years and just, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
This one's tough on many levels for me, I guess. Here, the Jays add Justin Turner. I think this happened like yesterday or maybe
did.
this morning. Toronto and Turner have agreed on a 1-year, $13 million deal. He's likely to DH, maybe spot Vladdy some days. I was reading that they want to put him at third base. I don't know if you know how many games he played at third base last year, Will, but you can count them on two hands, baby. It's 7. He is 39, and I'm not saying he can't go out there and play third base every day for the Jays, but to go from Matt Chapman to a guy who, for all intents and purposes, didn't play there last year, it's going to be interesting. But he did have a really solid year for Boston. 276 average, 23 home runs, and 96 RBIs. That's a career high for him, which I couldn't believe when I saw it. You like this at all?
I mean, I do. I feel like it's, at least from the outside looking in, it looks like a kind of a good fit, especially for Toronto. I've mentioned a bunch of times on here, I don't know what the deal is with Toronto. They give me like mini White Sox vibes, as far as like just kind of like paper champions, but really don't do anything. So, maybe adding a guy like Justin Turner, who's been around the block with so many really good teams, always produces, seems to be just a steady clubhouse kind of guy. This feels like maybe a puzzle piece that Toronto really needs. Guy with some leadership, has been a part of a bunch of winning cultures and all that kind of stuff. So, I think that his bat plays anywhere. Like, he's always been able to hit.
Yeah.
But I think even more important than that is just the veteran presence that seems to be much needed with that team to get them to, perform closer to what everybody expects out of them, as opposed to, basically underachieving in a lot of people's books. So feels like a good signing. I didn't really see it coming. But yeah, we'll see how it plays out. It'll be interesting to see if he does play third base, if he DHs, and kind of where he fits in as far as like where Toronto wants him in that lineup consistently.
Yeah. RotoWire on their kind of like their mock draft or a mock depth chart has them starting DH, which I guess I like him better than, I'd rather have him than Brandon Belt, I think. So, with the year he had last year. So, yeah, we'll see what happens, dude. I think you said it perfectly. Like, worst comes to worst, this dude is an absolute glue guy in the clubhouse.
Yeah.
And, I think you said that perfectly. Some quick hitters, and then we'll move on to a very exciting relief pitcher breakdown list, guys. Our last one of the offseason. So, definitely a little bittersweet, but we're excited to move on to some other fun stuff. But I got 5 real quick. I want to know what you're excited about. Adam Frazier to the Royals. What's our pillar, Will? You got to
build around Bobby Witt. Get him some help.
Amen. Throw your hands up. That's what I'm talking about. Guardians, they signed Cookie Carrasco to a minor league deal, so bring him back. I love that. This one's probably my favorite on the list. I don't know, dude. The next 2 I really like because it kind of make me laugh. Okay, Adam Ottavino back to the Mets on a $4.5 million deal after declining a $6.7 million player option. So you don't see this a lot, man. You don't see it. Honestly, you go to free agency, you honestly get paid typically a lot more than you would have if you would have stayed with the team. Don't see it all the time. He lost $2.3 million. That's got to be tough to come home and be like, dude, there's so many cool song lyrics speaking to how, you got to bet on yourself, dude, what about High School Musical, bet on it, bet on it, bet on it, bet on it, or however it goes. So there you go. And then I love this one too. Aaron Hicks to the Angels. They're paying his minimum salary, but the Yankees still owe him $19 million. So I just had to throw that in there. I don't know what that gets you. Maybe you can split time between him and Mike Trout. I'm just kidding. Let's free Mike Trout. That's our next pillar.
Yes.
We need to work on. And the last one, I don't really know why I put this on here because the money's not out yet. But Wandy Peralta to the Padres on a 4-year deal, which is, I think, pretty cool. They're really stabilizing that bullpen. He had a great year last year. Mid-2s ERA. Lights out for the Yankees. But like I said, no money. But just out of those 5, anything stand out to you?
I would definitely say the most impactful one would probably be Wandy Peralta. To the Padres. I think the Padres have really fortified that bullpen. We'll see if that lineup can kind of rebound. We'll see what the rotation shakes out to be as well. But the bullpen feels like it's been, at least on paper, solidified. So Peralta's a really good left-handed reliever, as you mentioned. So
Yeah.
definitely like that move for San Diego. I also, we kind of mentioned it. I like the fact that the Royals at least seem to be trying. They haven't, I wouldn't say that they've signed any just like stud superstars, but
Mm,
that's not really who they are, but they're at least starting to put some pieces together,
yeah.
and I don't expect them to win the division yet, but it feels like they're starting to sprinkle in some guys that can help start building a little bit of a winning culture.
Yeah.
It feels a little bit like what Pittsburgh's kind of doing, like a year ago, and I think Pittsburgh is finally on the right track again.
Yeah.
So hopefully this is a sign of good things to come for Kansas City. So yeah, if I had to pick one or two of them, I would definitely say Peralta and then Adam Frazier, just mainly just for the Royals' sake. They're trying to start putting pieces together, which is optimistic.
Yeah. It's interesting you say them and the Pirates. I love that comparison. They're both
Mm-hmm.
in each league's Central Division,
Mm-hmm.
which they're both
Winnable.
exactly underwhelming and winnable. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of fun parallel to look at, dude. I don't know if there's anybody more talented than Bobby Witt on either one of those teams.
Mm-hmm.
But so it's just going to be kind of neat to see kind of how that goes through the years and what moves they all make. Um, Dude, I think we spent about enough time on the grill, as much fun as I always have. And dude, it's going to be even more fun when the season starts. I was thinking about that today. I was walking the dog, and I was like, man, that is fun when you got live baseball to talk about.
Uh-huh.
But we still got business in the off season to work on here, Will, because we're going to go over some absolutely nasty arms, and not only names. We're going to talk about when you should go after them in drafts. So,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of Will's strategy. And I'll throw my 2 cents in, but nobody's here for that. Let's talk about our blue chips. We're going to break them down. We're back to the blue chip, steady Eddie, and question marks here, guys. It's
Mm-hmm.
very exciting stuff. We got 5 blue chips here. So let's go through them. Devin Williams of the Milwaukee Brewers, formerly an incredible setup man for them, but no, he's the man. And then number 2, Edwin Diaz. Let those trumpets roar. Number 3, Houston's new closer, Josh Hader. 4, Emmanuel Clase for Cleveland Guardians. And then Johan Duran. Man, this is like your dude, Will. You were talking about one of your favorites to watch.
Mm-hmm.
These are 5 absolute studs. What do you like?
Man, just golly, just insane talents. All 5 of these guys, and I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention Felix Batista.
Ah,
He's unfortunately he's out for this year due to Tommy John at the end of last year with the Orioles. But if Felix Batista did not get hurt last year, he would be absolutely slam dunk number 1 on this list,
yeah,
based on the season that he had and the team that he plays for. So I hope the recovery goes well for him and that we
no,
see him back, ready to roll in 2025. But let's get to this list, which is exciting. I've got Devin Williams at the top. Last year, I felt like he's always been incredible to watch.
mm-hmm.
But last year, I feel like he took a huge step forward in the fact that he had very, very few really bad outings.
Yeah,
And that had kind of been his bugaboo previous to last year. He would go out there a few outings each year and he couldn't find the strike zone or he'd get shelled, randomly. But last year, those were few and far between. And the strikeouts are always going to be there, which is, obviously nice in fantasy. But I just think that he has established himself as arguably the best closer in baseball.
yeah,
His whip's microscopic, 1.5 ERA last year. As I mentioned, the strikeouts are going to be as good as anybody as far as Ks per 9. I think the biggest question for me is how many games are the Brewers going to win?
yeah.
And so that's a legitimate question, I think, this year with them losing some key pieces off of that team. So We'll
Yeah.
see how that shakes out. But I think, number one closer off the board, if he's your guy, I like it.
I love it.
Edwin Diaz, I understand he's coming off a major injury, and that, there's questions there, right? And if somebody wants to move him down a few pegs because of that, I can't argue against that. But the reason that I've got him number 2 on my list is because when he's right,
Mm-hmm.
him and Felix Bautista are hands down the most dominant arms in the game of baseball. At least on the relief pitcher side. So, when Edwin Diaz is rolling, there's no one quite like him. I mean, he throws 102 fastball and a slider that literally falls off the table. So I'm anxious to see. Don't be surprised if he gets off to a little bit of a slow start. This is going to be his first real live game action in basically over a year.
Yeah.
So, have a little bit of leniency, so to speak, if you draft him, if he gets off to a little bit of a slow start. But I think once he gets a few games under his belt, I feel like he's going to be really, really awesome again.
You said that, it made me think of one thing, and then we'll keep rolling, Will.
Yeah.
If you're in a league and, people know their league mates better than others.
Yeah.
Dude, if he gets off to a rough first couple of weeks, I would knock on some doors, okay? Yep. And just see what it would take to get Edwin Diaz. I think it's going to depend on where, of course, he gets drafted, but it could be a really solid addition. Sorry to interrupt you there, brother.
No, you're good. I love that call. I just think that here's the thing. I think Edwin Diaz will probably have a few off outings, especially compared to 2022 when we last saw him.
Mm-hmm.
But man, the strikeouts are always going to be there, and so he is elite simply because of that.
Yeah.
And also I have the same concerns for the Mets as I mentioned with the Brewers. I don't know how many games the Mets are going to win, honestly.
Very true. They're in a tough division, man.
Yeah. So, just throwing out all the facts there. Let's finish up our blue chips here. Josh Hader, I think his value is as high as it's ever going to be. Coming over to the Astros, he's going to have plenty of opportunities. He's been one of the most consistently dominant closers over the past several years. So there's a lot to like there. He's still very much in his prime for the next, couple of years. So I think honestly, he might be one of the safest high end options that there is. So, that's a great option. Emmanuel Clase, I love the guy. The only thing, and I don't understand this, but his K rate is not elite for some reason. He throws 102 mile an hour sinker that I don't know how people consistently make contact with. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
With a great slider. So if he can ever get the K rate up just a little bit, he could be in contention for the number 1 overall spot, in my opinion, at the closer spot.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, he's very elite.
It's very Sandy-esque in that way.
He is. And I will say Cleveland, the Guardians, they win a lot of close games. And so even though the Guardians aren't probably going to win more games than anybody, they win probably more close games than anybody.
Yeah.
So he's going to get a ton of chances, which is always nice.
Oh, yeah.
And then rounding out our blue chips, man, I really like this guy. Johan Duran. Yep. Dude, there might not be another guy on this list that has better pure stuff. This guy, if you've never watched him pitch, he's just worth the price of admission if you get to watch him. He throws, he tops out at about 103 or 104 with a fastball.
Yeah.
And he throws, they call it a splinker. It's a combination of like a curveball, slider, and splitter.
Yeah.
And it's about 97 with movement. And it's when he throws it right, it's honestly unfair.
Start feeling bad for the catcher back there. But this
guy, man, My only concern with Johan Duran is the Twins, at least in the last year or two, have used him kind of weirdly. Sometimes he'll go out for multiple innings, and then they'll give him like 2 or 3 days off, and then for a while they didn't want to use him on back-to-back days. So we'll see if the Twins like kind of take the training wheels off, so to speak. But this guy has as good a stuff as anybody, man. I love the guy.
Yeah. 100 percentile in average fastball velocity. Would you like to guess what his average fastball?
I mean, average, I would say, would be probably 101 something.
101.9. Whoo, man, I'm telling you, that's why you listen right here. William and his expertise, guys. Yeah, dude, he's the man. We were talking, I've never had him on a fantasy team. He's going to be on one of my teams.
He is fun.
Yeah, this year I'm going to make a point. It's gonna, dude, because then you get to watch him and we're like, really, you have that fantasy rooting interest that we all love so much.
I mean, no lie, the guy could easily be the best closer in baseball if the Twins kind of just let him ride.
Yeah, I kind of feel like in 2022, that's when I watched him a lot when he was like really coming up. They would just use him to attack the heart of the lineup. I remember thinking that a time or two. But at that point, they also had, was it Emilio Pagan, and then Lopez was also there. I remember there being a little bit of a log jam there. Moving on to places that now kind of have a log jam. Let's talk about Pittsburgh and David Bednar, man. He is leading off our steady Eddies. We're going a tier down. Obviously, this dude is a stud. Had great numbers last year, a 2 ERA, a 1.1 whip, 39 saves. But, Pittsburgh Pirates, they could only win 39 games. And I think we'd be less surprised than if they won 90. After him, Camilo Duvall, absolute stud. Jordan Romano for the Blue Jays. And then we'll cut it off here at Raisel Iglesias for the Braves. So you got 4 guys with a lot of closing experience. And, three of them play for pretty solid teams. Who do you like here?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a really good list. You could honestly make an argument that any one of these guys could slot into the blue chip tier, but they're just slightly below for me just for a handful of reasons. So if I'll say it with Bednar, if he played on a little bit better team, he would absolutely be a blue chipper for me. If you go back and look at stats over the past 2 or 3 seasons, the guy is as good and consistent as anybody, just about, minus those high-end guys like Devin Williams, Felix Bautista, Edwin Diaz. But Bednar is great. I keep kind of holding out hope that he'll get traded at some point to a real contender that really needs a closer.
Yeah.
But he is great. If you've ever watched him pitch, man, he's got a great fastball, high 90s, throws a splitter, couple of off-speed pitches that are all plus pitches. But I love what the Pirates are doing. But you do have to take into account that the Pirates still aren't going to win just a ton of games, so therefore he's not going to get quite as many opportunities as some of these other guys. Moving down the list, Camilo Duvall, man, for most of 2023, he looked like a top 3 closing option, but he had a little bit of a rough patch to end the year. And I feel like that kind of bumped him down a few slots because he was looking like a blue chipper for most of last year, and then the way it ended, it's kind of but nevertheless, great option. He is the absolute guy at the back end of the Giants bullpen, and I think the Giants are going to win a lot of games this year. So very good option if you want to wait a little bit at this position, let some of those top end guys come off the board, and then get a really elite option in Duvall. Same thing really with Romano and Iglesias. These guys are a little bit, they kind of have ups and downs. It feels like sometimes these guys will come out there and look lights out, but other times they'll come in and it's like they're struggling to get an out. And whenever I'm drafting a closer, stability is huge for me. And so these guys that kind of have these big peaks and valleys, I tend to shy away from a little bit.
Yeah.
But here's the good thing about both of these guys. They both rack up strikeouts. They both have consistently done 9th inning work over the past few years. So plenty of experience, and they're on good teams. So that the Braves are going to win a ton of games. So Iglesias is going to get a ton of opportunity. And
Right.
really with Romano, he's kind of in the same boat. I mean, the Blue Jays underachieve a little bit, but they're still going to win their fair share of games. So both
Yeah.
of them are in really good spots to rack up a good number of saves.
Yeah, I was excited to see Hicks leave. I remember when they traded.
Yes.
Romano was on my team. He was on. I think I had like 7 or 8 teams. He was on like 4 of them,
Mhm.
and he was like American League Kimbrel a little bit
Yeah.
last year, especially in the second half. I mean, you were like white knuckling
Oh yeah.
through. I mean, oh my gosh, dude. Yeah. So I was pretty happy to see Hicks leave because obviously he's back in, can do the same thing. Iglesias, dude. What a career this man has had. They both land in this interesting place where their numbers look okay, but like the viewing experience,
Yeah.
it's not like a Devin Williams or Edwin Diaz where it's like, okay, when you're a fantasy owner and you get the notification that your guy's going in, you're like, oh, heck yeah, here we go, gonna get a save. Not with these guys. You're like watching your ERA. You're nervous you're gonna get an extra loss in the in the head-to-head categories. So I think they're perfectly placed on our list here because they're solid. They're not the greatest.
Yeah.
But you
they don't make it look easy a lot of times.
That's what we ought to call this list for the relief pitchers because it is so volatile, man. We got our second half of this is kind of more the same vein with these 4 gentlemen right here. Second half of our steady Eddies. You got Alexis Diaz, who, man, I mean to tell you, he was solid until he wasn't. His month of September ERA was like 8.5. It was crazy. And then Pete Fairbanks, Evan Phillips for the Dodgers. And then Paul Sewald for the Diamondbacks, man. What do you like about these 4?
I like these 4 a lot. You can make an argument that any of these 4 could replace those previous 4. I really like this particular tier, our steady Eddies here. You mentioned it with Alexis Diaz, man. He also looked like a blue chipper for a lot of the year last year.
Oh, yeah.
And I honestly feel like he got overused in that bullpen. I feel like Cincinnati won way more games than a lot of people thought going into last year. So he got a lot more opportunities.
Yeah.
And they were in the middle of their wild card race for basically the middle all the way through last year until the very end. And so, they were using Diaz as much as possible.
That's a great point.
And I really do feel like he hit that wall at the end of last year. He just didn't have any gas left in the tank.
Yeah.
Because I think that Cincinnati they didn't have a lot of pieces in that bullpen that could really hold the fort down.
Yeah.
And so they would have to go to Diaz early and often. And so it took its toll. Having said that, hopefully that's a learning experience for what happened, in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
I think Alexis Diaz has about as good a stuff as anybody on this list. So I really like where he is on this position. I think Cincinnati's going to win plenty of games again this year. That lineup's too good not to. He gets a little bit of a discount because he does have to pitch in Great American Ballpark. That does not do him any favors.
Yeah.
But I think he's a really, really solid option, especially if you're getting him in the middle rounds. I think he has the potential to be a top 5 guy at the position for sure.
Yeah.
Really same thing with all of these guys. I think Pete Fairbanks.
You gotta stay healthy.
Number one, he's got to stay healthy. You took the words right out of my mouth. He's always struggled with nagging injuries and major surgeries in the past. And I think another question for Peter Fairbanks is, what is this Rays version, this team going to really look like?
Yeah.
We'll see how they piece it together.
They split time with Jason Adam and all again.
Yes, and that's another thing. Like Kevin Cash loves to always manipulate the bullpen, and he does an incredible job with it. And that staff does an incredible job with it, with a lot of interchangeable parts, because that's how the Rays operate. But from a fantasy perspective, it can be frustrating because randomly Jason Adams might close, or a guy like in the past, like Colin Poche would come in randomly and close, So you always have to know in the back of your mind that whenever you got the Rays closer, that weird things could happen.
Yeah.
So
it's almost like draft raise starting pitchers, but stay away from their relief pitchers.
yes, if you're in a holds league, it works great because at least
That's
he'll
true.
probably get a hold. But yes, if you're in a saves only league, definitely you have to discount him a little bit because of those reasons.
Yeah.
And then rounding out the list, is there a more underrated, overlooked option than Evan Phillips?
I don't think so.
This guy, all he does, number one, he's on the best team in baseball.
Yeah.
And number two, he has been silently great at the back end of that bullpen for the last 2 seasons.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know of a guy that's more undervalued really at almost any position, especially in fantasy, than Evan Phillips. So
I'll tell you the problem. The Dodgers win by more than 3 runs so often. That he only got 24 saves, but his numbers are immaculate. I mean, it's wild.
But draft this guy with confidence, man. I mean, he's very rarely going to get a loss for you because of the reasons that you were just mentioning. He's going to rack up some saves. Hopefully, they play in a few more close games. But man, they're such an underrated guy in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then rounding out our list here as far as the steady eddies, Paul Sewald, man, another guy that I feel like gets overlooked a little bit. He's been with a couple of teams now in the past couple of seasons, but man, he has been as steady as they come when you look at the last 2 or 3 seasons as a whole. Gets good strikeout numbers, is really just a steady presence in the back end of what should be a really good Arizona team once again.
Yep. I love everything you said, man. I think it's perfect the way we have this list set up. We're moving to our question marks here. And first guy on the question marks, back to back with Paul Sewald, is Andres Munoz, who is, it was like, let this guy go in Seattle. You got to put him in the 9th inning role, but Sewald wouldn't let him do it. He was too good. Well, now it's his time. Okay. He got hurt last year again. He's been battling these injuries, 24 years old. He's a perfect first question mark because can he stay healthy? The stuff is there. We've said it for about 5 guys on this list, but if stuff holds, he is nasty, man. He has got a gross arsenal, and he can do the dang thing in the 9th inning. One of the bigger question marks on this list as well, Ryan Helsley. What happened in St. Louis? I mean, it's like something got in the water last year for everybody. Alex Lang for that up-and-coming Detroit team. Ryan Presley would have been much higher, got knocked down because of our main man Hader. But if you're looking for a holds guy, look no further than Mr. Presley. And then Tanner Scott for Miami. Solid coming from the left side. First 5 question marks. What you got?
Man, you talk about guys that have just insane upside. If you're wanting to play it a little risky and really wait on closers for some of these guys, I'm with you, but there's a lot of risk.
Yeah.
But it could pay huge dividends if you hit on it right, because all of these guys, you summed up Munoz perfectly. I mean, the guy has incredible stuff, but man, I don't know if he can stay healthy. He's going to be given every opportunity in Seattle. Seattle should be really good. Seattle also wins a lot of close games, and so he's going to get a lot of opportunity. But the question is, can he stay healthy?
Yeah.
So we'll see. Same thing with Ryan Helsley. I expect the Cardinals to win way more games than they did a year ago. I don't think that catastrophe is going to repeat itself.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. They need Helsley to be the guy in the back end of that bullpen. Don't give me Giovanni Gallegos, it's not the same. It's really not the same.
He's on the bottom of the list, Will.
He is. We'll talk about him. But Helsley has the potential to be a dominant closer.
Yeah.
If the Cardinals rebound like a lot of people think they are, he could be a great pick in the middle rounds for sure at this spot. And then I tell you what, man, if you've never watched the Tigers play, Alex Lang is fun to watch. The guy has insane stuff. The problem is sometimes he goes out there and he cannot find the strike zone. And that's gonna impact his whip. That's going to negatively impact his ERA because he's going to have a few outings to where it just is not good.
Yeah.
Otherwise, though, the strikeouts are going to be there. Tigers are improved. The Tigers have a chance to win the AL Central. So I think Alex Lane could be in for a big year if he can find a little bit of command.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that there was a better reliever last year, minus the very elite guys, other than Tanner Scott.
Yeah, he was gross.
I picked up Tanner Scott probably 2/3 of the way through the season last year. And honestly, he was one of my best, most consistent arms on my team. And it's like he figured something out in Miami last year. And, it always scares me a little bit when we've got a little bit of what I call a one-hit wonder, which is kind of what we have here. But what if he did figure something out? So I think he's well worth a shot once we get to these middle late rounds. If you're looking for a value pick, I really like what he did a year ago, and we'll see if he can kind of repeat it. If he can, then he is going to skyrocket up draft boards in 2025. And you mentioned Ryan Presley. He's the only reason he's this low on the list is because they have Josh Hader now.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it, if you're in a holds league, he's probably him and Yanier Cano is going to be number one on the board, fighting for that spot as far as holds go. But Ryan Presley, if anything ever happened to Josh Hader, he's, he might get closing opportunities again. So we'll see.
Yep. Hey, rolling down, we got two more sets of names here, man. A couple back-to-back Red Sox greats.
Yes.
Kind of. Kenley Jansen. I don't know if he counts as a Red Sox. No one's going to picture him in a Red Sox uniform when they think about his career. Kenley Jansen, Craig Kimbrell, Jose Leclerc, Albert Alzolay, and Yenier Cano, as you said perfectly. Oh, also Jose Alvarado. Dude, one of our favorites. A fan favorite, a show favorite. What about these six guys right here? I feel like you got a group of guys. I mean, at least the first four, pretty solid chances of getting some pretty substantial saves.
I was going to say, if you're going after, highly discounted guys, especially in a roto league to where you're not overly concerned about killing your ERA on a week-to-week basis, like in a roto league, these guys are very appealing in the mid to late rounds, stealing saves basically.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, Kenley Jansen, love him or hate him, he's going to get a lot of opportunities. He's going to get a lot of saves as long as he stays healthy. Same thing with Kimbrell. I mean, I don't think Baltimore signs him for this year if they don't expect him to close. And we've seen how him not closing works out. It's not good.
Right.
So, Baltimore, hey, I firmly expect Baltimore to win a ton of games again this year. So Kimbrell, as long as he doesn't implode, I think that he's, going to be a really solid option for the most part. I tend to shy away from him because I can't handle the heartburn anymore on my fantasy team. But hey, more power to those that want to take that risk, because it could definitely pay off in dividends with him on such a good team. And then those other guys you mentioned, like Jose Leclerc, was nails for the most part in the postseason. We'll see if he gets saves opportunities in that Rangers bullpen, which all of a sudden looks a little crowded with Spores and David Robertson now.
Yeah, should have updated the list and put D-Rob here, but he'd probably be near the top of these question marks.
Yeah, really we're going to say Jose Leclerc here for these purposes, but insert David Robertson or insert Josh Spores here, depending on who gets the majority of save opportunities.
Yeah.
And then Alzolay, you mentioned him for the Cubs.
You've been on him for a while.
Yeah, he was under the radar going into last year, and I thought towards the beginning of last season that when I watched the Cubs play, there was one guy in that bullpen that continually stood out to me, and that was Alzolay. And he finally started getting closing opportunities at the end of the year, and he did a pretty darn good job. So, again, if you're looking for a discount value pick, I like that in the later rounds. We'll see how that bullpen shakes out now that they got Neris, as we talked about earlier. But I think Alzolay will will get many opportunities to save, if not all. And then Cano, man, he was incredible at the beginning of last year. They
Yeah.
tried to use him as closer when Batista got hurt. Didn't look quite right there. So I would love to see Baltimore continually to use him in the 8th inning, be a dominant setup guy to get to a guy like Kimbrel or whoever's closing out games there, and just let Cano be the 8th inning guy and let him dominate.
Yeah. One thing on Cano, and then I'll move on to the rest of the list. I feel like if Kimbrel starts to Kimbrel it up, for lack of a better term, they're going to give this guy a go. And, okay, so maybe it didn't work out last year. Maybe it does this year.
Yeah.
And then, boom, you got, because the stuff, like you said, that it's there. Absolutely nasty. Okay. Last 5 guys here, guys. Let's see. Kyle Finnegan, Clay Holmes, Giovanni Gallegos, and then a couple San Diego Padres here. And this is why they're on these question marks. It's like, who's going to get the ball in the 9th? Yuki Matsui or Robert Suarez? Suarez is paid more, but Yuki's kind of the fun new toy. What are we thinking, Will?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I kind of am I'll say it this way. I'm going to definitely be keeping track with the Padres spring training to see who seems like has the edge on getting the majority of save opportunities. I would imagine that they're going to say that it's going to be a committee, but I expect one of those guys to emerge as kind of the 9th inning guy. So I think it's too early to tell. I don't think anybody truly has a totally good idea on how it's going to shake out. But keep your eye on that in spring training. I think that's going to be a real major battle to watch for fantasy purposes, especially. So yeah, because they could get some good opportunities. I think the Padres, I don't think they're going to be near as good as they have been, but I think they're still going to win plenty of games. So definitely keep your eyes on that. As far as the rest of the list, man, I don't like to hate on people, but all the rest of these guys are kind of will repellent as far as fantasy team stuff.
Yeah.
I can't take Clay Holmes because he just the stuff in some outings is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
But the fact that he'll go out there sometime and literally not throw a strike, I can't do it. So
numbers landed in a good place, but you're right. I mean, he might be the poster child for like one pitch, and I'll tell you whether he has it or not.
Yeah, I can't do it. I just can't. So he's off my draft boards, but like he's definitely can be a guy that can be very valuable to you, especially in holds or saves leagues. And then, I mentioned Gallegos earlier. He's been a solid reliever for a long time. I don't think he's really a closer. If you're in a holds league, I'll give you that. But I just not been as consistent as he was in years past last year. So we'll see if he rebounds a little bit this year.
Yeah, he got roughed up a little bit. Real quick, I have to go back to him. Clay Holmes, 2.86 ERA, 1.17. ADP is hundreds of picks higher than anybody else that we talked about in this section. But I'm kind of with you, man. It's a little stressful. He's gonna get a bump because the Yankees obviously got significantly better. And then Kyle Finnegan. I mean, I threw him on here because here's where we are. If you're in a Roto League, the dude will get you saves for the Washington Nationals. Whatever that means. It's like essentially trying to own the Kansas City closer. Like, okay, good. You'll get some saves. He had a whopping 28 last year. That's not bad. But his peripherals aren't great either. A 1.3 whip, what's our rule? 1.15, 1.2 and below. I always thought he'd kind of get traded at a deadline and then be like a middle reliever for a better team.
Right.
That's kind of what I see. And hey, probably a nice guy, but this is where we are. Will, as you look at this list, man, we knocked it out. You're looking at relief pitching on the whole. What's your strategy going into 2024?
It's a good question. So here's kind of my spiel on relief pitching. Obviously, I think first and foremost, we'll talk a lot about this when we get into our strategy stuff, but I think it's really important when we're talking about relief pitching to, number one, know the scoring settings of your league. because some leagues, just depending on whatever the scoring setup is, whether it's categories, roto, points, whatever, that will dictate how important relief pitching is in your respective league. I'll put it this way. If relief pitching is somewhat highly emphasized in your league, which in every league that I play in, it is, or at least should be, I make it a point, and I'm more aggressive getting relievers than most people consistently in years past, and it's worked for me.
Yeah.
I try to get a minimum of 2 stud relievers. Because here's the thing, like a lot of people, and I get why you would do this, but like a lot of people really emphasize trying to build a deep starting rotation. They're trying to build a deep start lineup as far as bats go. And I get that. That's important. But what a lot of people don't realize is that if you get 1 or 2 really dominant closers,
Yeah.
it literally helps you in every single pitching category. And most of your dominant guys, even though they might get 40 to 50 saves, they're going to make more appearances than that because they're going to go out sometimes and not get a save. And so you're getting a guy who's going to appear in roughly a third of the games. A starting pitcher is only going to appear in maybe a fifth or a sixth of the games. And you're just getting guys that dominating strikeouts, dominate in the whip category, and more times than not, they're going to put up a 0 on runs scored whenever they're out there. So, having said all that, I am all for going out and attacking this position hard. If you want to get one of those top blue chip guys, do it. If you want to get another one and you're available to do it, do it. They're not going to hurt you. They're only going to help you. And so as long as you feel good about, building a solid pitching staff and a solid lineup, if you do invest 1 or 2 premium picks on a dominant closer, then I am all for doing that, because the last thing I want to do is fill up my relief pitching slots with guys that I have no idea what I'm going to get anytime they're rolled out there. I can't handle it. And so that's, for all of those reasons, I go out and I'm very aggressive in trying to build a really solid relief pitching core.
Yeah, dude, I think it's great points. It's another one of those moments where you kind of told me that and opened my eyes to it. Like, hey, they help you in all your peripheral things. And I took that and I drafted Edwin Diaz. I think I've said this a couple of times. I fell in love with the kind of the draft shell. I'd go like 3 bats, Edwin Diaz, go get that first closer. And man, what happened was just such a bummer. And honestly,
purely unlucky.
Unlucky. That's the biggest thing. If you're going to go out, but it could happen with anybody you draft. That's the thing. Injuries is the only thing that really throws a wrench into that. I also, just to play devil's advocate, I've heard, and we actually play with a guy who does this. He won't even draft relief pitchers. He just grabs who's ever left, and then how attentive do you want to be to the waiver wire to be competitive in the saves category?
Right.
So that's one of those moments where stuff's going to happen. People are going to get hurt. People are going to have to step up. People are going to lose the closer position because of rough outings. And whatever happens, it's but I'll tell you what it is. It's a lot more difficult to win that way. It's just a narrower path. It can't not be done. It absolutely can. But I do think it's really important, to go out and grab a guy. I would say pretty solid goal. Go out maybe like a 1-1, get a blue chip, get a steady Eddie, and then you can go. I mean, some of these steady Eddies, you're in like the 140s of your ADP. So what round is that? Like 12 to 14.
Yeah, so, right in there. Yep.
I mean, go out and you can build teams with good relief pitching. And I think some people forget about that.
Let me ask you this. Where do you think the position stands from a depth perspective as opposed to how it was like the previous year or so?
Yeah, I think it's so volatile. It's really hard to tell. I think if we were to look at this list compared to the one we talked about last year, it's probably a touch deeper.
I agree.
But we are missing
Batista,
the best, and I think there are some young guys I like on this list more.
Yeah.
I like Alzolay
Yep.
for the Cubs. I think he's absolutely electric. I'm excited for what San Diego's going to do
Yep.
with their couple of guys. And then, of course, Alex Lang for Detroit and Tanner Scott, who's coming into his 30-year-old season,
Right.
who looks so good for Miami. And those guys, for right now, stepping into 2024, they're going to be the guys. And so I don't think we had that as much. We had more question marks last year based on are they going to be the closers? At least now we have a step to take. Like, hey, we know this is going to be the guy. So
I agree. It feels like this, at least going into 2024, as we stand right now in basically the beginning of February, it feels like we have less committees, quote unquote, because in 2023, or at least going into 2023, it felt like almost over half the teams were going to do a committee approach in some capacity.
Yep.
And now it feels like there's obviously some teams that are definitely going to do a committee approach, at least starting out. But it feels like there's more established ninth inning guys going into 2024 than there definitely was going into 23, even without Felix Bautista being there this year.
No, dude, you're exactly right. Guys, this is a bittersweet moment, man, because we love this breakdown series, and it's been a lot of fun. But the good news is we're going to dive into some really fun stuff. We'll have some laughs. It'll be fun. Some really fun stuff, though. Will talked about some strategy things. We're also going to do a little preview. This will be closer to the season itself, but we'll do league previews. We're going to do some mock drafts like we did last year. It's going to be a lot of fun, guys. So stay tuned. Thank you for listening to the breakout series if you did. And, obviously there's a catalog of episodes. If you want to know what our thoughts are on first base or third base, go back and listen to those episodes. We'd really appreciate it. Will, before we head out of here, man, anything to tell the people?
I'm with you, man. The breakdown series has been awesome. I hope that it was helpful or insightful or fun for anybody out there that's listened to us. And, going into your fantasy drafts later on this spring, refer back, as Cody said, to any one of them. Let us know if you agree, disagree. Let us know your thoughts. And again, hopefully it helps you build a more competitive and fun team this year. That's the ultimate goal.
Yep. That's it, man. Oh, we're getting into the nitty gritty, man. It's almost time to really start drafting. No more mocks.
Right.
I'm ready to get into some real teams. A few more mocks though. I'm still figuring stuff out, guys. Hey, if you made it this far, we really appreciate you. We love you. Reach out to us on Twitter or X at BTH_Cody and at Will Sism for any fantasy questions or life questions, man. Will's the father. I'm fixing to be one. We're here to give you advice. It's going to be great. Check us out on YouTube. Episode 66, that was last week. My hat was sideways the whole time. We didn't notice it until in post, so that's pretty tough, but it's going to be okay. Guys, we really appreciate you. But until next time, thanks for listening to episode 67 of Bringing the Heat.